Thanks for tuning into today's podcast. Before we begin, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our new remote training here at RPP. We've been offering remote training for quite some time, but we always required the athlete to come in-house for an assessment. Now we can do the whole assessment online and bring all of our services, pitching, hitting, and strength training to your doorstep. So, if you like what we do and how we do it, go to our website at rocklandpeakperformance.com and click on Remote Training in the toolbar. Thanks. The Behind the Scenes podcast. I'm your host, Nunzio Signore, looking to bring you great dialogue with some of the best in the world of player development. The world of training baseball players has changed dramatically during the past few years, and I'm looking forward to shedding some light here on what's the latest, what's the best, and what's really happening in the world of player development. Thanks for joining me for the ride. Hey guys, welcome to the Behind the Scenes podcast. Today we're talking to Sean McGrath from University of Iowa. He's in his first season with the University of Iowa baseball program. In 2022, McGrath was the pitching coach for the Seattle Mariners AA affiliate, the Arkansas Travelers. The Travelers put together an ERA of 4.27, ranking second in the Texas League. The staff led the league in three categories, totaling 11 shutouts, a 1.3 whip, and a 2.29 batting average against. McGrath spent a season as the pitching coach for the High-A Everett Aqua Sox and was named as the pitching coach for the Single-A Modesto Nuts in 2020 prior to the cancellation of the season due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Prior to joining the Mariners system, McGrath served as the pitching coach at Elon University from 2018 to 2019. In his first season working with the Phoenix staff, Elon pitchers amassed a program record 575 strikeouts. Prior to that, McGrath moved to UMass Lowell after 1 year as the scouting director for the Prep Baseball Report in New Jersey. He's a graduate of Lafayette College with a bachelor's degree in government and law. Quite impressive, Sean. Please welcome to the show today, my good buddy, Sean McGrath. What's up, Sean? How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to hop on and talk some baseball with you.
I had to leave early at the bridge seminar at Wake Forest. I spoke on Saturday and my daughter had a swim meet on Sunday, so I had to leave. Two of the guys that I really wanted to hear were you and Robin Lund. Robin got bumped to Sunday and you were on Sunday, the last day, and I was completely bummed. But, we're going to talk a little bit about maybe what you were talking about here. So you're a New Jersey boy. Tell us a little bit about your journey to where you are now.
Yeah, so I grew up in Lyndhurst, New Jersey, just a couple towns away from MetLife Stadium there, and went to Hudson Catholic in Jersey City, New Jersey. So I am definitely a Jersey boy. I spent my 4 years playing at Lafayette, like you mentioned, and then after that, played a year of independent baseball before hopping into coaching. And it was funny because I got my first opportunity in coaching kind of by luck. I was emailing all of the local schools about volunteer opportunities. I was signed back to go back to the Can-Am League. And Pat Carey, the head coach at the time of Iona, reached out and he said, "Hey, I just lost my pitching coach. Would you like to interview?" And I'm thinking, I'm 22 years old, but I do want to coach eventually and explore that option. So let me go and take this interview as great experience, and took the interview, thought I did okay. Was pretty comfortable with the questions he asked. And a couple days later, he called me to offer me a part-time job as, a paid assistant pitching coach. Spent the next couple of years as the youngest Division I pitching coach in the country. Before, hopping on with Prep Baseball Report. And then, like, as you mentioned, UMass Lowell, Elon, just a couple of really tremendous colleges, tremendous programs before, hopping the pro ball, and now here at Iowa.
I really, I've been watching Sean's progress way back from when I first opened RPP. I think it was maybe 13 or 14 years ago at this point. Sean was one of the first people that spoke at one of my first seminars that I held at my facility. And I remember way back then, you being one of the first guys that I knew to embrace analyzing data and making it actionable. How and when did you first start to realize, hey, this is actually something that can really help not only our guys, but help me possibly make the better decisions as a coach?
I think a little bit at a time. I was introduced first to Rapsodo and, Brooks Baseball, where I would dig through and just read, basically what they had, the information they had on big leaguers. And me being like kind of traditionally a numbers guy, I grew up reading the box scores of the Daily News.
Right.
That was my biggest form of reading growing up, as a young kid. But I always related well to numbers, data, information. Really love statistics, and so as I was given the opportunity to work with more and more information, more data, I realized that there was something there. It was a low hanging fruit to separate myself and to separate, the pitching staffs that I was working with. And it was something that we could leverage, both in player development and in decision making. And I think that's where I've really come to know data and information is, as a tool for making evidence-based decisions.
What I like about you most is you're like a student of the art of pitching. I was listening to Brian Bannister talk. What an amazing, amazing guy. You guys kind of, in a different way, remind me you're a little bit alike in the terms that you don't take just a cut and dry outlook at pitching. I mean, there's a little bit of old school in there, which I love. I mean, you know so much about mechanics and how to look at that with your eyes and video. And then you also, you use those statistics creatively, dive deep into what makes an athlete great on the mound from all aspects. Who are some of your peers, or should I say your go-to guys that help you get better at what you do as far as learning how to take data and using it?
Yeah, so I think, when I really started diving into data and how to utilize it in player development, I was at Elon. And we were kind of at the forefront, I think, at the time of trying to create systems, both for evaluation and for development purposes. And had a couple really great student managers there, Daniel Tucker and Kyle Sarrazin. Daniel is with the Blue Jays, I believe, and Kyle's still at Virginia Tech as their director of player development. And with their help, we were able to make data actionable. But along the way, I've grown so much, and I've really learned how to work within a system and create systems revolving around data and information from guys like Max Weiner, who's the pitching coordinator for the Mariners, Andy McKay, who from I feel like 30,000 feet away, as the director of player development, kind of became my mentor for coaching and what I think about coaching.
He's at a lot of seminars, like when I was at Palooza or I was at the 108 Performance, I was speaking with, and both times Andy McKay was speaking. What a really fascinating guy.
Yeah, he's brilliant, and he's captivating, and his systems for coaching and what coaching means really changed my perspective. And I don't want to say I coach less now, but I act more as like a professional reminder because of him. Reminding guys of what makes them the best version of themselves, providing an anchor for them to be the best version of themselves night in and night out, day in and day out. Kind of, it's where my head goes when I think about like what my role is as a coach. It's to support, and to remind, but it's also to utilize this information and see where we can go and get guys better. What are the lowest hanging fruits? And then what do we need to do to, overhaul a pitch or overhaul an arsenal, or how does this pitch fit within his arsenal? Some of those things I've just learned, through conversations with guys like, Corey Mascara and Robin Lund, learning the biomechanics side, the delivery side from guys like you or guys who are all over the internet posting about it. I like you said, I'm just a student of the game and realize there's an art to it. There is a nuance to it, which is a little bit of the old school in me, but understanding that it all fits. And we're really, our job is to make guys better.
I notice sometimes when I'm speaking to you or when you're listening to someone speak, you can see in your face when you're actually having an aha moment and you're actually absorbing something that somebody says. Because I don't know if you know it or not, but you get a very serious look in your face, and then there's this big smile that happens afterwards. Like you process it, you go, "Wow, I'm going to grab that," and then you go again. And it's kudos to you for always trying to get better. Player development analyst is in your title at Iowa. That's kind of a new term that a lot of people haven't heard before. Can you talk a bit about exactly what that means and the challenges of merging that role with the duties of a pitching coach? How are you planning to straddle that?
Yeah, really all it means is, I was brought in here to, one, be the pitching coach, but two, try to supplement our program and help create and evolve our systems for development, recruiting, all of our structures that are involved in a program. And it's really exactly what it's described as is, I am analyzing our systems and then trying to supplement them to make them better, in all facets of our program. And so, especially player development. And so the line isn't as blurred as it might seem. It really just, I am the pitching coach. That's what I'm set out here to do. And that title thrown on top is really just, I'm checking to make sure that, we're up to date with all of our systems and our process for developing better players and better people.
So now that you're back at the collegiate level, how did your initial stint in pro ball positively affect your game plan for this new venture back into college ball? How different is the approach? Why? And how do we go merging back into the road of collegiate ball?
Yeah, professional baseball was incredible. It was great for me. It really taught me the power of working within a framework, within a system, being evidence-based in my decision making. And it's guys like I mentioned before, Andy McKay, Max Weiner, the other pitching coaches, the other guys in player development with the Mariners. I truly believe that I'm a different coach now than I was 3 years ago when I was at Elon. And I think the one thing that is alike, no matter where you coach, is that you have to be a really good truth teller. And you have to be really good with the truth. And that's both gathering it and then managing it and then delivering it effectively. And sometimes that's delivering it with tough love. Sometimes it's delivering a little bit more soft, just kind of figuring out and deciding where a player's at and meeting him where he's at, while not sacrificing any bit of that truth. But I will say the games are inherently different. Being in player development in a professional organization, wins are still important, but you will sacrifice a little bit in this 24-hour segment, right? This game tonight, to make him better 24 months from now, 2 years from now, when he's in the big leagues and no longer an IA or double A. And I think the balance is a little bit more weighted towards the 24 hours, tonight's game in college baseball, because, there is an emphasis on winning. And the one thing I do understand about this game is that if you have really good people and you have a really good process, the results kind of take care of themselves. So, kind of wrapping it all together, they're the same but different. The goal never changes. You want to win games, you want to develop players. Just the balance between, this game tonight versus the game 2 years from now is a little bit different.
How about the level of performance, the eliteness, should I say, of a pro ball player, and the way you go about creating change with a player who may be just a little bit higher level of athleticism?
Yeah, I think they're where they're at in like their stages of learning are just a little bit different. So there's a lot, more education that has to take place here at Iowa. And I say that, there's a lot of education that goes on in pro ball too. A guy can be a really gifted thrower of the baseball, but can really be a beginner when it comes to, making the baseball turn right or left, sweeping it or creating more sink, more depth. And you have to realize that, the way in which you present the information, has to be a little bit different. The guy who's in double A has, has his own thoughts and opinions on what makes a really good pitcher, what makes him a really good pitcher. Being able to utilize data and information to help sway him to make meaningful change. I think that's the power of data and information, right? You can be evidence-based and present it in a manner which, is going to relate to him in the moment, and help him become a better version of himself.
So on the physical side, do you think there's a little bit more work to do with a collegiate guy if he has aspirations of playing pro ball, dealing with even the high A guys as opposed to collegiate guys? Do you see a bigger body there? Do you see a very apparently bigger body, more athletic body there?
Yeah, you
Right.
do.
That's important. That's important for the younger guys that are actually listening to this and are 165 pounds. They're getting away with it now, but
Absolutely. There's, and that's the importance of your role, right? And the collaboration between, both who I am as a pitching coach and you as a strength and conditioning guy. Those worlds are really, truly at its core one, right?
they're interlinked.
That's right. And so, when I think that's when the magic is made, and that's why at double A you see a more of a finished product, right? Is
Right.
because they've already spent time with knowledgeable people in your realm. And they've worked now a couple years once by the time they get to high A or double A within a system where pitching coaches and strength and conditioning coaches are working hand in hand. And I think that's the beauty of like what you're doing at RPP is everything is under one roof where they can go and you are collaborating with the pitching coach. And if the pitching coach sees a deficiency in the delivery, it's not just how do I cue this guy until he gets it right. It's you have their screening. Can you attack it and groove patterns in the weight room? Some of the stuff you were kind of at the forefront of. That's where the most bang is for the buck.
What I've seen is from going and consulting with MLB teams, when you get to the rookie ball level, it's almost like you're dealing with college guys because you have these really, really elite throwers from like the DR who are have been throwing gas since they're 14, but they haven't lifted a weight in their life. And that building process to double and triple A, like you said, a big part of that I notice a lot of MLB teams need to work on a little bit is getting their rookie guys to be more athletic in the weight room and put some size on. A lot of these guys are just naturally born hard throwers. And they're young and they're 18 years old and they're coming here and they don't even know how to squat. It's, they got there without weightlifting, but I don't necessarily know that they're going to be able to keep their arm there with bad movement patterns and not a lot of weight. So that double A, talking about getting a guy up to double A, I think that putting on some size and getting good movement patterns going and grooving good movement patterns is a key thing. I'm glad that you talked about that. Another thing I wanted to say is, of all the schools to go to, Sean, Robin Lund left you a lab. Like, it's like you've got all the working parts in order for you. That's like a kid in a candy store. It's like,
Absolutely.
I can see you rubbing your hands together and be like, oh, here we go,
Yeah, I think that's the coolest part about what's going on at Iowa is the systems that are already in place for making players better. And then the culture piece, right? The people piece of the puzzle was also very apparent when I came and I visited. And not to say that they had to recruit me. This is a wonderful opportunity and I'm really excited I'm here, but I wasn't in a rush to go back to college baseball.
Right.
The work that Coach Heller and Marty Sutherland and Robin did is the reason I went back to college ball. What's in place here at Iowa is tremendous.
Tremendous.
Absolutely incredible. And Robin is a huge part of that. Robin's got me a lot better, over the years and, as a pitching coach and understanding the delivery and the function of the delivery. But, being here and understanding what was already in place, I was blown away. They are almost 1-to-1 and in some areas way above, some of the more progressive organizations in professional baseball.
So all great coaches steal. Okay. And one of my biggest steals in recent memory is Sean's concept, or should I say a concept that I heard you speak about at a seminar at my facility years ago, which I use to this day with great success with certain pitchers. And that's opening up that lead leg 2 to 3 inches on flat ground in order to compensate for the mound and possibly help get better transfer. Because of the slope of the mound, you have more time to land. So we're opening up a little bit more, because I noticed that a lot of guys don't always get their arm up in time when they're throwing flat grounds. I haven't been doing as much flat ground as I used to, but there are guys that when I am doing it, I have them open up and they look at me like I've got 5 heads. So is that your concept? Or if not, where did you come up with it? And what was the thought process of coming about that? Because that's one of the main things that you spoke about in your PowerPoint. And I immediately was like, dude, that's brilliant. That's like a no-brainer, And I've never heard anyone else talk about it. And I use it. Even my pitching coaches look at me like I'm nuts when I tell them I want them to do it. And also one last question, when do you know when it's right to use and when it's not?
Yeah. So it's funny you mention it, because it's been an evolution, which has like you, it's just pushed me toward more mound work. But I believe at this point, and again, you said stealing is part of good coaching, right? I almost started my entire presentation with a video of Ricky Henderson stealing a bag at Wake Forest, just to say, like, I didn't invent much of this.
Right.
However, I do think that was my idea. I've never heard somebody else talk about it. And like you said, when I mention it at first, before people actually start thinking about it, they kind of look at me sideways as well. But I was always really disappointed with how guys looked on flat ground when throwing. And at the time, rocker drills were really apparent, like really important to us. Specifically, like we weren't lifting our foot at the time. And I would take video and I would analyze the video and I'd say, this looks all wrong. And so we had a player who's now with the Orioles. I had him open up 3 inches, and now all of a sudden the arm was on time. Transfer looked way better. His lead leg, the function of his lead leg was a lot cleaner.
So are you opening up that lead leg even in static positions like a rocker drill where you're not taking your foot off the ground?
Yes.
Okay, so I never did that. I was always putting a mark where they naturally land, bringing it over 2 to 3 inches and telling them and putting a new mark and then having them land there.
Yeah, so both in static positions
Right.
and when they're moving a little bit more dynamically. We started doing that with our arms at Elon. And what we noticed was it created that time and space that you typically get off a slope, that you weren't getting prior to that, and so that really was the emphasis. Like, I wanted to create more mound-like feel without at the time going on the mound.
A lot of my guys don't do running guns anymore because they don't actually transfer as well as a shuffle.
That's
like
right.
a shuffle, just 2 steps and throw. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And now I will introduce the landing open thing to guys at times. And you mentioned the guy that just looks really bad in flat ground throwing, where his arm is really, still low, not up, or the guy who like lands straight typically, but will land 6 inches close on flat ground. That is the guy I make aware and try to overemphasize, the correction. But most of the times now, similar to you, is we just hop on the mound more often.
Yeah.
But when I started doing that, I don't know maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, it was big and scary to hop on the mound more. If you remember, it was like
Yeah. When I have guys that are coming back from Tommy John that have to throw on flat ground, right? I find that the last thing I want to do is have those guys have a laid arm on flat ground and they're coming back in a back to throw program and they're only throwing at 50%. And we're trying to fix this problem. You know what I mean? That might have been a part of the cause to begin with. I really notice a bigger change in the back to throw programs that guys come in with to open them up a little bit and their arms don't bother them, and even guys that have a little bit of tightness in their elbow sometimes or their shoulder, if you open their stance up a little bit, I found that kind of makes that, alleviates that. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. It's just it's a great thing. You are in my mind at least once a week, all off season and in season when we're doing with pitchers, because every time I talk about it, I see your face. So
That's awesome.
thank you for that.
It was really, I was just disgruntled with how ugly flat ground throwing was.
And it really works, man. Having experience in both the MLB and college, what do you consider some of the big players that you consider non-negotiable for a college pitcher in regard to moving up through the ranks from college ball in order for him to be draftable? Just because now that you have that experience in MLB, just talk about that a little bit, because you've seen where these guys what they have to be there.
Yeah.
So you're a perfect guy to kind of like groom these guys.
Yeah, I think the main thing is you need to establish a track record. Like I watch a lot of these guys that go to, they go through the summer circuit in high school and they sign with this program that, might not afford them opportunities to get on the mound as much as they need to get on the mound and pitch, in order to get drafted. And so, I think it's, you need to accumulate innings and a track record would be first and foremost. But now with like pitch grades and pitch modeling, you don't need always to like have the most prolific career. You just need to accumulate enough data that someone can really like what you do with the baseball, like the ball flight out of your hand. And so, I think it's the same in recruiting, right? You need to have present stuff. You need to have, the projection for future stuff, and you need to be a winner.
And the game is changing, so you have to do things a little bit differently now.
Absolutely. And it's not all about just going and putting up wins and losses anymore and having a good ERA. You got to do it, a little bit cleaner now.
Right.
I don't know how else to say that, but like there are inherent tools, especially with like pitch grades and pitch modeling, that guys are looking for, whether that be velocity, which is always the driver for since the end of time, right? But velocity and command, but within that, you have ball flight, right? So are you a guy with really high level of fastball ride or sink and run? Do you really sweep the slider? Can you really turn over and side spin a changeup?
Right.
Some of these things that were just graded out by scouts are now actually on, being captured through, TrackMan and Hawkeye. And, it's, when you do it well, it's to your benefit. And when you do it poorly, sometimes it's not. And so it's, definitely evolving, and there's analysts that are dissecting biomechanical data and there's a lot of different avenues to go and jump off the page in a positive way or in a negative way.
And you just got to find out where this guy, like, once again, it always comes back to the lowest hanging fruit, right? What does this guy need? But it's one of those things, right? It's either a bigger, more athletic body. It's a better arsenal or velo.
That's right. Exactly.
Got a couple more questions for you. Talk a bit about your process for getting freshman pitchers up and running in regard to taking on higher workloads throwing wise in college ball. What is your process for getting these guys acclimated?
Yeah, so I think a big part of that is to try to get ahead of the process, right? Try to control and help them manage the summer prior. A lot of times that might mean getting them on campus for a summer class where you can really have a controlled setting for your throwing. But when you get a guy on campus, in their freshman year, you realize there's a lot of stimulus, right? They're away from home. There's, a lot to do, a lot more freedoms, degrees of freedom. There's the social aspect of things, and then figuring out that, man, there's a lot of really good pitchers here. I'm no longer just the best pitcher on my team, and it is what it is. And so considering all the new stimulus and all the new stressors, I like to take my time with freshman pitchers. And that might mean not building them up for a starter workload, but, monitoring them in a way that will allow their, arm fitness or their workload capacity, right? Like their tolerance for that, understanding it might not be as high. So trying to build them up a little bit more gradually to the role you might eventually see them in for that year.
So, as regards to a freshman coming in after his freshman season, do you on hand generally see guys that would benefit more from going to a facility like mine and getting their reps in a local league by that facility? Or do you think it's better for them to go to a more renowned league and do what everybody else does? They kind of just go find a gym and they go do that. And if that's the case, the latter, what would the circumstances be where you would bypass something like somebody coming here and getting his innings in, where he can actually be managed with all the data and the analysis and all of the strength training? Speak about that for a little bit.
Yeah, I think I try to bucket freshmen based on their spring workload.
Right.
And so, for the guy that does not need to quote unquote prove himself in the summer, which is, it's about half of your freshman, I would say. I
Half.
think the environment that you were speaking of, like going to RPP and training and getting whatever, throwing type work in that they need. I think that is absolutely the most important thing for them. However, I do think there are a subset within that freshman group who haven't pitched all that much, who need to go to a league where their stats are a thing.
But what
And
about if they haven't pitched that much due to their
yeah,
athleticism?
yeah. Again, if that's the case, right, they need to go and get more athletic.
Right.
If it
Right.
was simply I'm thinking of the subset where the guy is maybe struggles with mental skills,
Right. That's what I
and
thought you were going to say.
yeah, things where can't man, they've got the arsenal, they've got the body, but mentally just could not handle
Right.
the ins and outs of a spring season. That guy, I think it's appropriate to send him to a league where stats are still really matter a whole lot.
Yes, I
And we can
agree.
track those things. But for, the guy we're talking about, the guy who just needs to get better,
Yeah.
going to a summer league over an opportunity like you're speaking of would be absolutely crazy, in my
Because
opinion.
we're thinking of, in the future about. I was talking to you at Wake Forest. I was talking to you about opening, maybe starting a college team where guys can land here in the summer and continue to get their reps in with the local team, and we can completely manage their workload while being on the phone with you. You need Rhapsodos, I'll send them as they come. You need TrackMan, I can send them as they come. You want me to do a mocap for them, I can do that and send it to you. We know
Yeah.
when they're pitching because they're on our team, right? We know what their workload should be the day they pitch, what they do the day after. It's almost like a salon treatment for a guy who needs he needs the overall package.
Yeah, that is the majority of your freshmen, right?
Right.
The
Yes.
majority of your freshmen, whether they threw too much and are now shut down for a period, right? They need to go to controlled setting, that salon type treatment
Right.
where they're getting everything under one roof.
And becoming more powerful in the same time.
Exactly. Exactly. And then the guy who pitched a moderate amount of innings probably needs to just go and build a bigger engine. He's probably best served to come to you as well. There again, the majority of guys would do wonders after their freshman year to go to a facility and to a team like you're speaking of. I don't know if there's a better option
Yeah.
for 99% of the freshmen.
We've been pondering that for years, and it's like, you know what? I think this is a great thing we could do. I have one more question for you. What do you see as your biggest challenge in order to get ready for the upcoming 2023 season? In the mind of Sean McGrath, what is the one thing that keeps pinging through your head? Like, got to do that. Got to do that.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is just, really, it's crazy because they're at home right now, but making sure that they have a work capacity and a workload tolerance that's required for their spring season. Because they get back to campus and they have a month. We have a month to get these guys ready for opening day. And, you want your starters built up to, 85, 90 pitches.
So right now I'm looking out of my office window and there's probably 20 college guys here that are in for that month
Yep.
because of exactly what you said. And we've got them getting ready. So they're actually at like game ready when they show up, not only
Yeah.
from a body standpoint, but we've got them on a throwing program and we're monitoring their volume. That's an important, that's great. That's great that that's your biggest concern, because that's our biggest concern. So trying to get guys over here during their time off is we found is a really, really great program.
Yeah. And there's, again, there's opportunities when they're around a gym and a facility like yours to like, be in trusted hands for a month. However, that's not always the case. And so,
Right. Yeah.
that is my biggest concern.
And that's a valid concern, because
Yeah.
I see guys go away for 10 days and they come back and what did you do to yourself? It's like only been 10 days.
Yeah. What did you do to yourself? And now they're expected to compete for the role you thought they were ready for. And they might not be from a physical standpoint, let alone mentally, ready to accept that challenge and compete for a job, because, we're evaluating as much when they get back as we are developing. We need to set our, at least what we think is going to be our pitching staff and, our depth charts. And if guys haven't done work, the work, that we've prescribed, it's a scary thought.
Yeah.
And so, Robin's done a lot of really great things here on the front end. We utilize sensors, driveline pulse sensors.
Yes, we use them here
things.
too. We use them here as well.
Yeah, he's the format for building out a throwing program is incredible. Because of what Robin's, laid the groundwork for, the foundation for. And it makes my job really easy because I could see each day, how much a guy has thrown, how much workload they've taken on. And that's one of our ways of combating it. However, if you could just send them to, a facility like yours and say, here's our winter throwing program, can we make sure it all aligns? And, that's kind of the ideal world.
We've been talking with Sean McGrath, pitching coach at Iowa. I got to say, man, I'm so happy because it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. And I really dig when I see guys moving up in the ranks that actually are hard workers. And Sean is amongst one of the hardest and dedicated workers that I've ever seen. Sean, how can guys reach you?
At McGrath 31
Okay.
would be my Twitter handle. And then my email address, if they had any inquiries, would just be Sean-P.-McGrath@iowabaseball.com.
Awesome. And you can reach me on Twitter at Nunzio Signore, or my facility on Twitter and Instagram at RPP_baseball. The website is rocklandpeakperformance.com. If you're interested in velocity-based training, you can grab my book, Velocity-Based Training, How to Apply Science, Technology, and Data to Maximize Performance. It's both, it's released by Human Kinetics, and it's also on Amazon. Sean, thanks for being on, man. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, I had a blast. Anytime we could link up and talk baseball, talk shop is a good time.
We're going to do it again for sure. And that's it. So till next time, stay tuned for the next episode of Behind the Seams podcast.
Thanks for having me.
All right, brother.